Welcome to the Female Stoic podcast. My name is Stephanie Poppins, and I am an advocate for literary empowerment. That means I believe the examples set by the literary masters can broaden our life perspective, create increased self-awareness, and empower us to overcome the obstacles we encounter here in the 21st century. By listening and referring what we hear to Stoic philosophy, we can foster a strong sense of self and navigate the world more effectively. This podcast takes the form of both discussions and meditations. And if you like what you hear, you might consider looking me up on my socials, where I post empowering videos every day. Or you may like my classic audiobooks and original stories available on my website, neworldbooks.uk. Happy listening. Hello and welcome to today's episode of the Female Stoic podcast. Today I am live streaming on YouTube, which I will continue to do in the future at 3 p.m. GMT every Friday. Today's episode is entitled The Repetition of Bad Habits. We've spoken about adopting good habits before, the repetition of good practice, our daily steps forward in the maintenance of our higher selves. But today I wanted to talk about the repetition of bad habits. Just as repetition builds a stronger muscle for good habits, it does the same thing for bad habits, making them exponentially harder to break over time. The difference with bad habits being that they are running in the background, if you like. They are subconscious. We are not making a conscious effort to repeat them. They are happening anyway, which in some ways makes them harder to control. As always, we will be referring to the Stoic masters who tell us that repetitive bad habits are destructive directly because they're corrupting our character and they're making us a slave to their own impulses. So the Stoics are warning us every time we repeat a negative action, we are conditioning our mind to repeat that yet again. We are gradually diminishing our self-control, mental clarity, and inner peace. So let's have a look at the author we're featuring today. The literary master is one of my favourites, Ellen Montgomery. If you don't know, she's the author of Anne of Green Gables. And if you like listening to my voice, you can hear her on my audiobooks anywhere you listen to audiobooks. But before you do, I would like to let you know that the final episode of my Mystery in Meadowbank, my latest audio drama, has dropped on Insight Timer, where Tuesday St. Clair is finding out exactly what is in the mysterious tin buried by Jonathan Green 12 years before. So take a listen if you can, and if you're not on Insight Timer, it will be available wherever you listen to audiobooks. So back to Ellen Montgomery, the author of Anne of Green Gables. Now, I've referred to Montgomery a lot on this podcast because I never cease to be amazed by the sheer volume of her works and the depth of her characters. Today we're looking at the habits of Anne Shirley, her female protagonist, and how these habits have a detrimental effect on her. Montgomery's ability to incorporate these complex themes into writing makes it accessible to younger readers And they are complex themes. They are the spinning of adversity into advantage. So Marilla and Matthew Cuthbert are waiting for an orphan boy to help with the work at Green Gables, a country house in Prince Edward Island, Canada. Then a skinny red-haired girl turns up instead. Feisty and full of spirit, Anne Shirley charms her way into the Cuthberts' affection with her vivid imagination and constant chatter. But it's not long before Anne finds herself in trouble. And Anne is criticised as a character for her profound impulsiveness, highly romanticised imagination that is blurring reality, this unyielding stubbornness she has, this intense vanity regarding her physical appearance, and of course a fiery temper. These signature flaws drive the narrative's central conflicts and her coming-of-age journey. So what does she do in this story? Which repetitions does she exhibit that are, in fact, detrimental to her well-being? Well, she makes careless mistakes because of her impulsivity. She frequently commits well-intentional but disastrous faux pas, such as getting Diana Barry drunk on currant wine or baking liniment in a cake. These repeated acts mirror this hyperactivity she has and this inattentiveness. They function as the driving force of the plot because they are forcing Anne to learn lessons on consequences, contrition, and the value of conforming to societal standards. And of course, Ellen Montgomery here is using repetition as a literary device, wherein the first 3 chapters parallel this technique by repeating the word surprise in their titles. Mrs. Rachel Lynn is surprised, Matthew Cuthbert is surprised, and Marilla Cuthbert is surprised. Another one of Anne's repetitions is saying sorry. And she tends to say sorry in a very dramatic, theatrical way whenever she makes a mistake. But of course, she doesn't want to make mistakes in the first place. She's using daydreams to dictate her reality. This leads to unwarranted fears, like panicking that the woods are haunted and dangerous stunts, such as nearly drowning in a leaky boat whilst acting out a poem. In her younger years, she holds on to grudges and she reacts with explosive rage when provoked. And despite despising her red hair, she is still very fixated on her appearance. This vanity culminates in the infamous hair dyeing episode, where she attempts to turn her red hair black. So they're charming repetitions, but they are also weaknesses. It's a repetition of something that she is using as a survival technique rather than exhibiting an action that she's actually consciously chosen. These narrative devices are used to highlight her fear, her uncertainty. And as we come to see in the novels, it takes a good many years for her to shed, or in fact transform them into positive repetitions, such as writing and journaling. And this is the powerful Stoic message here, I believe, and one that truly mirrors the experience of Montgomery herself. Anne's patterns, particularly her unbroken monologues, her romanticized renaming of her environment, and her impulsive rule-breaking, are contrasting with this strict Victorian decorum of Avonlea and this societal expectation that she should be a good girl. But Ellen Montgomery is championing here this little girl's right to unconditional love despite these flaws. She's not so naive as to neglect the importance of the maturation of her protagonist. She understands it's a process, and I argue she does this sensitively rather than didactically, as was so prevalent in literature at the time. And I think this is why Montgomery's novels are so well received. There is a balance. Ellen Montgomery shared a deeply autobiographical connection with Anne Shirley. They both experienced early maternal loss and grew up in strict rural environments, Montgomery by her grandparents, Anne in foster care. As a result, both developed incredibly rich inner worlds. And of course, both then exhibited these survival techniques. But the beauty of Montgomery is that she channeled this fear, this longing that she experienced as a child into something really quite profound. She found deep comfort and spiritual connection in the natural world, and she and Anne escaped the harshness of their real lives through storytelling and a hyperactive imagination. So like Anne, Montgomery's mother died soon after she was born, leaving her practically an orphan. In Anne's case, both of her parents passed away, but in Montgomery's place, her father chose to desert her and leave her in the care of her strict grandparents, who lived on Prince Edward Island. She would only see her father one more time much later as a teenager. So, to go back to the repetition, in this story, the repetition is of something that is happening behind the scenes, as it were. It's a subconscious way to cope with the destruction both Montgomery and her characters experience. By practicing this detachment over a prolonged period of time, I argue it's difficult to maintain inner peace. We are in fact then reliant upon that detachment for our security. And while this may be fantastic in the short term, it is not a sustainable answer to good mental health. And I think that's how Montgomery gets the balance right here. She's allowing Anne's journey to evolve, to develop. She's practicing compassion when writing her healthy conclusions to the many dilemmas that she faces over the course of her childhood. And in this stable environment where she can tackle her demons. Now, of course, as a child, Anne is beholden to her environment, and she is going to naturally display these repetitive mismanagements, if you like, as she learns, and as a way to cope with her situation. But Montgomery here is affording her the balanced kindness that she lacked herself in the form of Matthew Cuthbert and the stalwart Marilla. A necessary balance so as not to overindulge this repetitive foible that she has. Two completely contrasting characters who give her a sense of grounding so that she is not overindulging this negative behavior. Yes, Anne falls regularly, but in this story she always lands on soft ground thanks to the support she gets from Matthew and Marilla. So what are the Stoic teachings on why repetitive bad habits are so dangerous and how to conquer them? The Stoic philosopher Epictetus compared our faculties and habits to a fire. He said every time you give in to a vice, such as complaining or overindulging or reacting in anger, you are essentially adding fuel to that fire. Marcus Aurelius frequently noted we harm our own souls when we fail to uphold our rational principles. Bad habits or repetitions such as chasing external validation, avoiding difficulty, shifting our focus to things outside of our control. This attachment to externals leads to ongoing anxiety and frustration. So, of course, if Anne were not to grow out of this, if Montgomery didn't afford her the stability to then develop and grow out of this, she would be ever more in that repetitive loop. And, of course, she would never grow. Seneca viewed the procrastination that Anne Shirley deliberately exhibited when she was trying to memorize her Sunday school repetition, and she avoided starting it because she was so fixated on Matthew's famous puffed sleeves that he gifted her. Seneca viewed this procrastination as not only a waste of finite time, but also encouraging self-doubt, leading to a state of paralysis. If we're putting things off in the hope that something better is going to come, or when we're waiting for something better to come, we are in fact paralyzing ourselves in the moment, which of course is destructive. So how do we break this repetitive cycle? We are all guilty of repeating bad habits. According to the Stoics, we should not rely on willpower alone, which can be limited. We should practice a systematic approach to retraining our mind. So we're actively building this opposing virtuous mind. We are becoming aware of what our mind is doing, which is hard work. If we find ourselves habitually giving into anger, for example, we can choose to purposefully practice patience. If we review our day at the end of each day, we can evaluate the temptations we were exposed to and how we dealt with those. By recognizing our triggers and our belief systems that are fueling these bad repetitions, we can interrupt this kind of autopilot response. So the best thing to do is to start small. We take action today in a small way. We understand that we're not here to judge ourselves. We're just here to notice, to recognize, to acknowledge the disciplined choices we have and the repetitions we can so easily fall into if we're not aware of them. So we're shifting here from feeding our comfort, feeding something we know, a behavior that we know, to actually feeding our discipline instead. And of course, this means we have to be open-minded about the things we previously assumed to be true about ourselves. Practicing curiosity helps us reimagine how we see ourselves and the world. Understanding we have much to learn helps us open up our minds to new opportunities, challenges, and perspectives. Negative thought patterns and negative behaviors are both elements of this repetition. By thinking we are always making the wrong choices, or things will never work out for us, for example, seeing things negatively as in no one likes me, or something bad is going to happen, can be an impulsive action, and can be something that is running in the back of our mind without us realizing it. And this is what the Stoics are saying here: become aware. And this is what Anne of Green Gables learned to do over time through the education of both those around her and Marilla, and a healthy balance with also Matthew. She came to acknowledge her weaknesses, traps that she could so easily fall into. And over the course of the books, we see that they start to fall by the wayside as she becomes a more rounded and stable individual. Our negative behaviours might be withdrawing from our friends or family, avoiding new things, or not taking care of ourselves because we think that somehow we do not matter in the grand scheme of things. These are enticing in a strange way, because when we have practiced unhealthy thought and behaviour for so long, this repetition, it's something we know, and therefore we subconsciously are drawn to it. So how do we prevent these coping mechanisms, these repetitions, so that we can then move forward with our lives today? The answer is to be mindful of what we are doing repetitively and subconsciously. If we are more aware, we can begin to notice our self-criticism and negative self-talk. We can be aware of our levels of stress and exactly what our mind or our behaviours are doing at any one time. Of course, as we know, what we think is not always based on reality. Our experiences and our emotions can lead us to make untrue or unrealistic conclusions about ourselves, which is what happened in this novel. What we have to understand is this is a daily endeavour, as I always say, but also this will keep coming. Negative repetition will keep coming. Our minds are programmed to seek more of the same. That confirmation bias, that program running in the background, if you like, we have to be aware of, and we have to do whatever we can to try and reduce the effect of that repetition, those repetitive behaviours and thoughts that we experience every day. So the journal task for today is to think of a repetitive thought or action that we have exhibited over the last week, and ask ourselves the following: why am I thinking or doing this? What evidence is there for this thought or action? What else could it be that's encouraging me to do this or think this? And is this thought or behaviour helpful to my inner peace? Thank you for listening to the Female Stoic. It was lovely to see you all today, and I hope to see you next week at the same time, 3 p.m. GMT, on the Female Stoic podcast. Bye. Hey, Stephanie here. Thank you for listening to the Female Stoic podcast. It is an honour, and I just want to say I really appreciate you being here. It's amazing the power of women in literature and the Stoic messages they have to share. Please, if you can, return the favour by spreading their words and sharing this podcast far and wide, so more of us can benefit from their wisdom. And don't forget to leave a review if you like what you heard. See you next time.